I want to find hermits that are like, I'm not like other hermits. Hi, Sarah here. Welcome back. We're back with another video in the Top Tarot Trumps Times Tarot Memoir series. In this video, I'm going to share personal examples related to the Hermit card, as well as 5 of my favorite Hermit cards across all of my different tarot decks. Let's get to it. I've got a new camera. I'm trying on a new mic system. I still have my old backup mic system here. I am just excited for this new experience. Funny how at the beginning of the year, I thought I was going to finish this whole series by the end of 2024, and here we are now, 9 or 10 cards in. That's okay. Even if I might take breaks in the middle of doing this series, or if it takes me a while, I'm still enjoying doing it. It's really fulfilling to simmer on each card and not only think about, what are my favorite cards across all these different decks, but also how would I apply them in my life? How do I conceptualize them and interpret them? And of course, I super appreciate everyone who takes the time to leave a comment as well, because other people sharing their personal examples of when the card has shown up for them, or personal examples of how that card energy applies to their life, that helps me understand these card energies and these archetypes so much more. So thank you if you have left comments. And thank you also, even if you just watched and or liked. Anyway, so in simmering on this card, I wasn't sure how to describe or understand this card beyond just introspection and contemplation. I wasn't sure how to conceptualize the Hermit in a memoir or an example. What makes a Hermit moment or Hermit example particularly Hermit-y in comparison to the regular self-introspection I tend to do every day? Well, 2 nights ago, 2 phrases came to me very clearly, and I feel like I finally understand how to conceptualize the Hermit, some visual ideas. And today, while I was looking at more excerpts and readings on the Hermit, I found a 3rd phrase. These 3 phrases that I found, I feel they also correlate pretty well to the memoirs I want to share. So the first phrase related to the Hermit I want to share is the phrase consciously disengaging. And the memoir or personal example I want to share is consciously detangling from my relationships or in my relationships. For most of my life, I had people pleaser tendencies. I was just more comfortable defaulting to whatever other people wanted to do or wanted to say. Instead of saying out loud, I want to go to the store, do you want to come with me? I would ask instead, do you want to go in the store? What do you want to eat? Do you want to go for a walk? If that person said no, then okay, I just wouldn't go for a walk. But that's not the way that I want to live. And in the past couple of years especially, I have realized how complacent I get when I'm outside with my partner. Even though the majority of the time I am pretty easygoing and open to whatever other people want to do, it can be a disservice to myself. I would rather just say, I feel like eating XYZ, what do you think? Or I want to do this, do you want to go with me? So the past year especially, I have been consciously detangling in my relationships and made more efforts to actually do things on my own without my partner. So for example, this year I went to New York without my partner. I went to see friends by myself. Traveling alone was a nice experience. I also started taking exercise classes this year. So whether or not my partner goes with me, I still do my best to go to exercise class every week. Even just last month, I spent the weekend at my dad's place in the neighboring county. And that was the first time in a really long time that we had spent more than a night apart, besides the New York trip I just mentioned. And when I was at my dad's place, I had a lot of other events that I wanted to do and friends that I wanted to see. It was just nice going on a solo date by myself and or seeing my friends without my partner there all the time. So I tie in the Hermit with this idea of conscious detangling because sometimes we just get really wrapped up in whatever we're doing and or we tie our identities in with the people around us or the things that we do or the things that we like. It's nice once in a while to take a vacation, to take a break and breather is what I meant to say, to take a break or a breather from all that stuff and to find our own light as the Hermit represents. Now, related to that, the next phrase I came up with for the Hermit is coming home to oneself. So like I mentioned, it's like taking a vacation from everything else and or the things that we are used to and the habits and the patterns that we're used to so that we can really understand ourselves better and explore and enjoy our own company. Now, I read in some books that the Hermit can represent not just ourselves being the Hermit, but also an external guide who can help us find that wisdom inside ourselves. An example of the Hermit as an external guide is my therapist. I started therapy in April this year. I had some inkling that the ways that I was trying to live weren't working. I felt like I was stressed so often and I didn't have any proper stress management techniques to help me be less stressed. And I think I've mentioned therapy in other Major Arcana videos. I do apologize if I sound like a broken record, just always using the same example for different things. But for the Hermit, the main thing I want to highlight is that my therapist really does feel like a guide for me to help me find my own inner wisdom. I have seen some posts on tarot subreddits and other tarot discourses where people think therapists are just coddling the client, and tarot readers, a good tarot reader, will tell you like it is. They'll lay out the truth bombs because that's what the client really needs to hear. But in my experience, that's a fundamental misunderstanding about what therapy is supposed to be. Granted, every therapist is different, but the healing and the work that I've experienced with my therapist has been so different from any other relationship I've ever experienced. When I had a life coach the past few years, yes, she did help me understand more pieces about myself, but I also felt like the goal of those sessions was to be coached. It almost felt like a hierophant because I was looking to her for wisdom. So while a life coach is similar to the hierophant, a therapist is more similar to the hermit, in my opinion. In a recent therapy session, I was sharing some anxieties that I still had about my upcoming trip to Vietnam. I told her I just still feel anxious. I don't know how to deal with this anxiety. I know we've talked about my anxiety about this trip before, but it's still here. It's not going away yet, and I don't know what to do about it. So we just talked about what exactly is making me anxious, and I just kept exploring it and just sharing the weights that I was feeling on my chest. After sharing the weights and tearing up a little bit and letting the feelings pass through, I suddenly felt like more clarity. Like now that I finished crying it out and just feeling like how heavy and scared I felt, I suddenly feel clearer. Like, I feel like I got this now. I feel like, okay, well, I know that future me will take care of it. And it was such a strange shift to experience. In the past, without therapy, I would have just avoided the anxiety and kept suppressing it and kept just, I don't know, making jokes about it or just feeling bad. But in therapy, having that safe space to process, to just not even process, but just share the anxiety out loud and feel it in that safe space with my therapist, like witnessing me and being there with me, that helped give me clarity. After I finished crying and after I said out loud, wow, I feel better and I feel smarter anyway, I asked my therapist, does it feel silly to you that I have anxiety about these things? But then 5 or 10 minutes later, after I finished crying and talking about these things, I also have the solutions. Like, it almost feels like the therapist knows what the answers are. And I knew what the answers are. But why did I have to have the anxiety blocking me from getting to that answer? And my therapist shared it does not feel like a burden or annoying to her at all. First of all, in fact, she loves working with clients with anxiety. Maybe she says that about everybody, but I was happy to hear that anyway. Second of all, the way that she put it was really enlightening. Her job as a therapist is not to tell me what the answers are. It's not to prescribe me what my issues are. It just feels very presumptuous when people online are like, oh, it's so obvious that person has mommy issues, or it's so obvious that person has repressed trauma, blah, 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 blah. In my experience, that can feel presumptuous and that can feel kind of condescending to just be diagnosed or labeled by strangers on the internet. So in contrast to that, my therapist explained that we're more like archaeologists in these therapy sessions. When we talk about stuff and when things start coming up, my therapist might say, hey, is there something over here that we want to explore and uncover? Is there maybe something here? Me as a client, I could say, oh yeah, good point. There is something there that we could explore more. Or I could say, no, I think I'm good there. There's not much to explore there. I could also say, maybe there's not something over there, but there is something over here actually that is related and that is actually coming up. So the therapist really is like the hermit guide for us, the assistant archaeologists of our minds ourselves. I really appreciate that kind of approach to therapy because it does center me. It's not my therapist telling me what I should be working on or what to believe. Instead, bringing the hermit energy, she's really helping me uncover my own truths, especially at my own pace, and only when I feel ready to start poking deeper and start exploring deeper. And related to that, the third phrase that I read today that I now associate with the hermit is readiness to receive wisdom. And the memoir or the personal example I'll share here is developing my own spirituality. I cannot remember if I've mentioned this or maybe how many times I've mentioned this. When I was younger, my dad got into Buddhism and he was really into meditation. Even now, 10, 20 years later, he's still really into meditation. It really helps him a lot. But for me, when I was younger, meditation and meditation halls was so boring. It was very understimulating and it felt very torturous for me. I also did not enjoy the Buddhist youth groups I was a part of on Sundays. I didn't enjoy going to Buddhist temples. I didn't feel connected with anybody there. I didn't feel connected with any of the spiritual practices either. So I grew up feeling very averse to religion and spirituality, anything that was done either in groups and or where it felt like I have to do this because that's what other people are doing. I avoided spirituality for the longest time because I was so averse to being a part of groups. But I started becoming more open to spirituality when I joined the Sass Witches server. The Sass Witches subreddit and Discord server, that whole Sass Witches community is a group of skeptical, agnostic or atheist, science-seeking witches. So when they talk about magic, they also are sharing a lot of like psychological benefits and or psychological twists, and the language and the ways that they framed it just made so much more sense to me. That kind of community, that kind of approach to magic and spirituality actually really appeals to me. Tarot still remains the only like witchy or spiritual thing that I do. Besides that, I really only do like my regular self-introspection and just self-reflection and all. But because I have found a community that I enjoy engaging with, I feel this phrase that I mentioned. I feel more ready to receive wisdom. If I were to raise kids, or if I could go back and raise my child self, I would not have forced her to go to all these meditation halls when she clearly was not enjoying it. I would really want to explore what she likes and what she doesn't like, and how we can make meditation or Buddhism work for her. Maybe the Buddhist youth groups that I went to were not the right one for me, but maybe other ways of learning about Buddhism could have been interesting for me. Or maybe other forms of spirituality could have been appealing to me as well. Like even taking walks in nature and sitting in the grass and enjoying things like that. Honestly, I don't think I enjoyed things like that when I was younger anyway, but you know, the point is we would have tried together. Me and parent me would have tried together. And in this case, maybe the Hermit reverse could also mean not ready to receive wisdom. Like I mentioned, for the longest time, I was not ready to explore spirituality. I was very closed off. Who's to say that I needed spirituality anyway? If it wasn't helping me, then no one can say that I actually needed it. I found other ways to cope and to live in the meantime. But now I do feel more ready to explore other, I don't know, spell work or rituals, season-specific like activities, because I found that community that I enjoy. All right, so those were 3 examples in my life related to the Hermit. Now for 5 of my favorite Hermit cards across all of my tarot decks. I really wanted to find hermits that were not looking at a lantern. I think that that imagery, yes, while effective, can be overdone. Similar to the past videos, like I want to find hermits and other tarot cards that actually speak to me. I want to find hermits that are like, I'm not like other hermits, but unironically. So some common traits that these hermits have is they're disengaging from the outside world, from the busy world for a while, or they're also facing their inner wilderness, their inner minds, their inner wild. All right, so the first hermit I want to share is from one of my favorite decks, the Somnia Tarot. This person is holding a long stick. And the quintessential lantern is in their other hand, and they're facing the ocean. So the ocean, I'm associating that with the moon. I'm associating that with emotions, with intuition, with whatever's going on inside. And we see that the ocean is also hitting against like some rocks that the hermit is standing on. So there's the idea of facing your inner rockiness, facing your inner turmoil, and or being in tune with your own rhythms, your own ebbs and flows, your own pushes and pulls. That's the same thing, ebbs and flows, pushes and pulls. I feel such a sense of serenity looking at this card. The color palette is so simple. The imagery, the symbolism just makes so much sense to me. Maybe the stick is where the lantern was. Or maybe the stick is similar to how in the Fool, we see that Fool carrying their items on a stick. So the Hermit has no items on their stick. I don't know, do you know? Another hooded figure hermit we've got is in the Modern Love Tarot. This coat is white instead of the usual black or gray. In the background, the scenery that I see, all of society, all of these things are happening, but they are not a part of it, whether by choice or whether not by choice. It was actually the guidebook for this modern love tarot that gave me the idea that the Hermit can mean consciously detangling in my relationships as well. Even in a committed relationship, you can still detangle and hold space, make space for yourself. It doesn't mean that you hate your partner. It is okay to disengage and just let things happen without you for a while. When you are ready, you will get back to the action. The third hooded cloak hermit I'll share is from the Gaian Tarot. Fun fact, I still haven't done like readings with this deck, but I still enjoy flipping through it, and the Major Arcana are pretty good. They've definitely shown up in a few of these videos. We see this person who is looking at the bees, no, wait, that's an owl. Sorry, that's an owl. They're sitting next to a tree. They're basically writing notes. This card could easily be renamed the Hierophant. So it's an interesting choice to put this card as the Hermit instead. This reminds me of that third phrase I mentioned, readiness to receive wisdom. Maybe this Hermit is finally ready to notice the details that they might have missed before, stopping to smell the roses. So this Hermit is now smelling the roses metaphorically, where they're ready to look at the stuff around them and actually take notes. It's kind of a choice to sit down next to the tree. It's a choice to observe the owl or whatever you want to around you. There's no pressure to actually observe and learn everything because this is not the Hierophant. This is not like school. This is not someone telling you what you can or have to study. You can do it all at your own pace. You study the way that you want. Integrate that kind of knowledge the way that you want. The next Hermit I'll mention is from the Tarot of Mystical Moments. This one is another conscious disengaging. Oh my god. This one is also consciously disengaging from the happenings, the stuff around them. I see parallels between this card and the typical Three of Wands card where there's someone who's looking out at ships at sea and stuff. The world is turning, things are moving along, but the Hermit is in the middle in what looks like a lighthouse actually. Maybe they are shining their own light for other people to revolve around, to follow, or they're taking a moment to be on the lighthouse to recenter themselves in the middle of all this other stuff that is happening. And the last Hermit I'll mention is from the Vendor deck. My friend gifted me this deck a couple months ago. She got it from a thrift store, wasn't quite clicking with it, and is letting me borrow it for the time being, indefinitely. I haven't read with this deck either, but I am finding the cards really interesting to look at. And this Hermit card is especially fascinating. There is no lantern in this card, so this Hermit is already not like other Hermits, but instead this Hermit is opening themselves. Dude, that's so metal. They're looking at themselves, hiding behind like a shadowy part, or maybe taking a moment to explore more shadowy parts, disengaging from all the bright stuff happening as well. Interesting imagery from what seems like a simple card. But yeah, I've never seen another Hermit that's like literally opening themselves up like that. I like that. And that's that. Those are my favorite Hermit cards. Those are some personal examples related to the Hermit. If you have your own favorite Hermit cards and or things that you do or you don't like to see in Hermit cards, I'd love to hear about them as well. And of course, if you have your own Hermit tarot memoirs, of course, I'd love to hear about them. Let's all continue adding to our collective knowledge about, our personal examples of each of these Hermit cards, these tarot Major Arcana. That is all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.